Let's continue with the poem, the stanza 1. Before we start it, let's understand again. Let me tell you, the ode, popularly known by its first line, "We are the music makers," is the first poem in the collection of Music and Moonlight by Arthur O'Shaughnessy. This ode is a tribute to artists across different realms. It is not confined only to musicians or painters. It encompasses art of different realms, right from everybody, from musician to poet to sculptors to everybody who writes, authors, everybody. It includes everybody. These various words like music makers, dreamers of dream, movers and shakers, you will come across these words. The figure of speech is euphemism. I'll tell you what a euphemism is in the next class, but the figure of speech here is euphemism. It describes, the poet describes the life of an artist, the beauty of their artworks, their impact on the surroundings and on the world outside. Let's start. We are the music makers and we are the dreamers of the dream. The poem makes a straightforward appeal to the artist across different realms, all artists of the world, calls them the music makers and dreamers of dream. We encompasses the whole section of artists of the world. It makes a powerful appeal, since it avoids mention of a particular art form. It appeals equally to artists across the globe, across different segments. So, this is a massive appeal. So, the poem gives art an encompassing definition. We artists, dreamers of dream, it shows their visions. They are visionaries. They can foresight things. They can see what is going to happen. They can see what the past said and can speculate what is going to happen. Let's continue. Wandering by lone sea breakers and sitting by desolate stream. These are the condition of the poets. These are the condition of the artists. In these lines, the poet describes the artist and their soul searching. When you execute an art, it has to come from within, from your heart, from your soul. How they wander, the artists wander alone by sea breakers, sit by the desolate streams, that is, lonely streams. The poet tries to focus on the isolation, the loneliness of spirits of these artists, and ache in their hearts that actually shapes up the creativity which is worth such admiration. Let's continue. World losers, world forsakers, on whom the pale moon gleams. Okay, lovely. O'Shaughnessy builds upon the travels that these artists go through, the experiences that these artists go through. He calls them world losers and world forsakers. World losers and forsakers means they're escapists. They run away from the material world. They run away from the hustle bustle of this world. This highlights the difficult life the artists lead to shape up their creation. Often it gets difficult to survive. These artists are not always rich. They do not take up a job which will give them lots of money and recognition. There are times when people call them losers. There are times when people call them escapist, because they hardly can manage their sustenance. The pale moon points to the little or very meager sustenance, very less money that they manage to gain for themselves through their art. This strikes chords with most of the artists who look for a patron for their art in absence of a hefty inheritance or a good fortune. They don't have that good fortune. They don't jump into a profession which will give them good fortune. Even then they take it as their option to go on with their life. Okay, continue. Yet we are the movers and shakers of the world forever, it seems. They can be forsakers, they can be losers, but yet They are the movers and shakers. They have the ability to move and shake, create a difference in the society, create a difference in the world. Despite that, the poet says these artists are movers and shakers of the world. By the phrase he means, what does he mean by the phrase? That someone who colors outside the lines, people who show the world a face outside the societal norms and protocols, people who are capable of moving and shaking the world and possibly building a new one, those who bring dynamicity to an otherwise very static world. Okay, so this is how the poem starts, stating about, the first stanza states about who the artists are and what they do. Okay, let's continue with stanza 2. With wonderful deathless deities, we build up the world's great cities. Now, in this stanza, the poet highlights the effects of the artistry on the world. The first previous stanza spoke about who these artists are and what they do. In this stanza, it highlights the effects, how they do it, and the effects of the artistry on the world. The wonderful immortal songs created by the artist's soul are capable of building the world's great cities. They are capable of building and rebuilding new cities, new settlements, new civilization by arousing, radical thoughts, feelings, and realization in people's minds. You don't think they create cities through bricks and cement. They create cities by the words, by their imagination. By the imagine, let me take here the example of, just take an example of Harry Potter, if you can relate to the construction, the make believe world, the make-believe world that J.K. Rowling creates, and we actually dwell in that world when we read the book. That is an capability of an artist who can create timeless stories, like who can create empires, who can create places like Hogwarts, which we can imagine, which we cannot imagine as common minds. Only somebody whose minds are far too perceptive, far too foresighted, who can see the future, who can imagine beautifully, can do that. Let's continue. And out of fabulous story, we fashion an empire's glory. What does that mean? Similarly, out of a fabulous mythic story, they can fashion a glorious empire. This means that the fantasy that comes to an artist's mind can shape up things he builds. It is, after all, poems, stories, songs, paintings, and other arts that mark the glory of a civilization. We often talk about the artistic height of an empire to judge their greatness. Sitting here, we don't know what happened during the Mughal Empire. Sitting here, we don't know what, at this age, we don't know what happened during Akbar time. But reading Akbarnama, or reading such memoirs of Huan Sang, or memoirs of other travelers who had come and written, we can actually visualize the age, we can actually make out what happened at that time. Had it not been their writings, had it not been their noting down of what happened during those times, we could not get a glimpse of that period. So these artists help us to actually visualize those periods of those times. Okay, continue. One man with a dream at pleasure shall go forth and conquer a crown, and three with a new song's measure can trample a kingdom down, or an empire down. Okay, the poet further says that one man with a dream and adequate opportunity, pleasure would mean adequate opportunity at hand, can give the dream a concrete structure. He is the one who shall go ahead and conquer a crown. It is the element of fantasy and something mythic that makes anyone to move forward and outdo themselves. The crown refers to extraordinary achievement. The poet actually adds to say, if more people, like three people, come together on such new, novel ideas, they can trample an empire down. That huge is the potential of artistry. Means, they can create, kingdoms, they can create stories of Bahubalis, they can create stories of Alexander, they can create stories of those Troy. That is the that is the power of an artist. That is the power of an artist who can actually make you imagine how magnificent, how glorious, how stupendous were those times. Okay, it can make you imagine to such heights. If these artists combine together, they can actually create an whole era, they can actually create a whole kingdom in front of us. That is the potential of an artist. Moving on to stanza 3. The previous stanza was a symbolic height. It reminds one that popular adage, the pen is mightier than the sword. The artist can bring more change in people's mind than anyone else. The previous stanza just stated as that. Moving on with the third stanza. We, in the ages lying in the buried past of the earth, built Nineveh with our sighing and Babel itself with our mirth. What does this mean? Please refer to Nineveh, Babel. I have already talked about the biblical allusion of Nineveh and Babel. So, in this third stanza, the poet continues to applaud the power of artists. The artists were present in all ages, in the ages lying, they were present in all ages. In the past, the artists built the ancient city of Nineveh that was abandoned in 1612 BC. It was buried past. Sighing probably means the torture those enslaved people received to build the buildings, the streets and all. And because of those because the slaves were tortured to build the city, the curse fell on them and the city was destroyed. Moving on with Babel, that is present Babylon, was created with mirth because they wanted to reach heaven. So they wanted to build a tower which would reach as high as heaven, till there, with the artists, like the architects and sculptors, working together happily. They wanted to build such a tower. Okay, now continue. And overthrow them with professing to the old of the new world's worth. For each age is a dream that is dying or one that is coming to birth. O'Shaughnessy says that the artists are capable of overthrowing the old world with the prophecy of a new world. Prophecy means with the predictions of a new world. According to him, each age is the result of dream of these artists. This is again replaced by another dream of their own. So the dream is capable of replacing themselves to give birth to a new dream. Dream of a new modern world. This is a perpetual mission. Artists are never happy with the creation for long. They want something new. The creation that they come across becomes a benchmark for them to progress, to build up something new. Their artist creations is not only limited, an artist is not limited to a certain work. They would always want to flourish more, prosper more, and keeping the benchmark of his previous creation, they create more. they create more, and that is why the world is never stagnant. The world is refreshed. The world is, it becomes a perpetual mission to build again and again, to create new ideas, to come across, you know, if you ask me, our philosophy, our psychology are based on the theories that Aristotle had kept, or Plato had kept, or Luca had kept. These theories that they build, and on those theories we build our new theories. Had it not been their theories as a benchmark, would we have progressed? Would we have progressed? Leave aside the philosophers. Think about the scientists. Okay, think about the economists who have always put forward those theories, and based on those theories we build up new theories. If their theories were not there, would we have succeeded in the way, or progressed in the way that we are now? So art is not stagnant, it is a perpetual mission that has to move forward with progressive ideas.